Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. I never thought I'd be writing this down, but maybe someone needs to know what happened here. My name is Finn Callister, and I still am, I guess, a senior operations technician at Raven Ridge Hydroelectric facility, buried deep in the Cascade Mountains. You've probably never heard of us. No one ever thinks about where their electricity comes from until it stops flowing. That morning started like any other Tuesday on the graveyard shift. I'd been at Raven Ridge for 11 years, the last 5 spent mostly on night rotation. Some guys hated the isolation, but I found peace in it. Just me, the steady hum of the turbines, and the occasional maintenance check. The facility was a marvel of engineering that most people didn't even know existed, powering 3 counties while remaining practically invisible. I was in the main control room around 5:30 a.m., logging the overnight operations and preparing for shift change, when the first call came in. Ronan, my supervisor, voice tense in a way I'd never heard before. "Finn, you seeing anything unusual in the power consumption metrics?" I glanced at the monitors. The readouts showed significant fluctuations across all grids, spikes and drops that made no sense for that time of morning. "Yeah, actually. Grid 3 just dropped 30%, but 1 and 4 are pulling overtime. What's going on?" "Turn on the news. Any channel." I switched on the small TV we kept in the corner of the control room for weather updates. Every channel showed the same images: streets filled with people running, emergency vehicles with lights flashing, reporters looking panicked. The crawler at the bottom mentioned widespread disturbances and unexplained violent incidents. "Jesus," I muttered. "Riots?" "That's what they're calling it," Donovan replied. "But I've got a buddy in emergency services in Auburn. Says it's something else. People attacking each other, acting wrong. Department's calling it a public health emergency now." I watched the footage more carefully, noticing how strangely some people moved, staggering, lunging at others. One news helicopter shot showed police firing into a crowd, which didn't disperse but continued advancing. "Look, I need you to stay put," Donovan continued. "Corporates requesting all essential personnel maintain positions, keep the turbines running, stabilize the grid where you can. Power's going to be critical for emergency services." "What about the day shift?" "Patching them through to other stations. Better to minimize movement right now." He paused. "This might get worse before it gets better." That was the understatement of the century. By 8 a.m., the news broadcasts started cutting out. One by one, stations went to emergency broadcast signals, or simply to static. The power fluctuations grew more severe. Auburn went completely dark first, followed by sections of Tacoma. Seattle was experiencing rolling blackouts despite our best efforts to stabilize the flow. I kept the turbines running, rerouting power as needed, following emergency protocols we'd drilled but never expected to use. All the while, my phone buzzed with increasingly desperate texts from friends and family. From my sister Thalia, "Are you seeing this? People are going crazy. Wade was bitten by our neighbor. He's really sick, not answering calls now." From my friend Dante, "Highway's jammed. Everyone's trying to leave the city. Some guy just attacked a family at the gas station, tore at them with his teeth. This isn't normal, Finn." I tried calling them back, but cellular networks were becoming overwhelmed. By 9 a.m., I couldn't get through to anyone. The facility intercom crackled. It was Luther from the dam monitoring station. "Callister, you need to see this." I made my way from the control room to the observation deck overlooking the reservoir. Luther stood at the window, binoculars raised. "Look," he said, handing them to me and pointing southwest toward Auburn. Through the lenses, I could see smoke rising from multiple locations. The city that normally spread out in neat grids looked chaotic, with flashing emergency lights concentrated in several areas. Even from 20 miles away, the situation looked dire. "Been watching for about an hour," Luther said. 3 separate fires have broken out. No one seems to be containing them. "What about the others?" I asked, referring to the 4 other technicians who should have been on site. Cade and Ash tried to leave after the first reports. Both have families in Tacoma. Haven't heard from them since. Ezra's in the auxiliary control room, trying to raise someone at the Central Grid Authority. Cassia's securing the access road gate. A new message appeared on my phone. This one, an official government emergency alert. Remain indoors. Avoid contact with affected individuals. Do not approach anyone displaying aggressive or erratic behavior. Await further instructions. I showed it to Luther, whose face had gone pale. "My wife and kids are in Auburn," he said quietly. I put a hand on his shoulder, not knowing what to say. The radio at his belt squawked, Cassia's voice coming through. "Vehicle approaching the access road. Unmarked van, moving fast." We hurried down to join her at the main gate, a reinforced security checkpoint about half a mile from the facility proper. The van had crashed violently into a tree near the gate, and a man in a blood-stained police uniform was approaching on foot. "Officer," Cassia called out as we arrived, "this is a restricted area." The man kept coming, moving with an odd, staggering gait. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, revealing a massive wound that looked like something had taken a bite out of him. His eyes, something was wrong with his eyes, vacant yet somehow focused on us with terrible hunger. "Sir, stop where you are!" Cassia raised her hand, but the officer kept coming, his mouth opening in a guttural moan that raised the hair on my neck. That's when I noticed the van's side door was open. Inside, I could see more figures moving. A hand reached out, gray-skinned, fingers curled like claws. "Cassia, get back." I pulled her away from the fence just as the officer lunged forward, gripping the chain link with bloodied hands, face pressing against the metal as he tried to reach us. More figures emerged from the crashed van, all moving with that same wrong, hungry stagger. "What the hell is wrong with them?" Luther whispered. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was impossible. Something from fiction coming to life before our eyes. But there was no denying what we were witnessing. These people were dead, yet still moving, driven by some primal hunger. "We need to lock down the facility," I said, backing away. "Now." We retreated to the main complex, securing every entrance. Ezra met us in the control room, his face ashen. "Just got through to emergency management in Olympia," he said. "It's happening everywhere. They're calling it an infection, spreads through bites, bodily fluids. They don't know what causes it, but once someone turns, they attack, they spread it further. Victims die then. Come back." "Jesus Christ," Cassia whispered. "What are we supposed to do?" Luther asked. "They told us to keep the power running, but the military is establishing safe zones," Ezra continued. "They need power for field hospitals, command centers. We keep the lights on as long as we can." I looked at the monitors. More sections of the grid were failing as substations went offline. The cities we were powering were literally falling apart. "I need to find my family," Luther said suddenly, grabbing his keys. "They're out there." None of us tried to stop him. We understood. Cassia decided to go with him. Her apartment in Tacoma was on the way to Auburn. They took the facility's emergency truck, loaded with what supplies we could spare. "We'll send help if we can," Cassia promised as they left. "Hang tight." That left just Ezra and me at a facility designed to be run by a minimum crew of 6. We divided the responsibilities. He would handle the power routing and communications. I would manage the turbines and security. By noon, we lost contact with the outside world entirely. The radio picked up nothing but static. Emergency broadcasts had stopped. Our phones showed no service. The only signs of the ongoing catastrophe were the distant plumes of smoke rising from the cities below, and the occasional helicopter flying overhead, too high to signal. Ezra and I worked in silence, doing our jobs out of duty and training, though a growing part of me wondered if it even mattered anymore. Were there still functioning hospitals that needed our power, command centers directing rescue operations, or were we powering empty buildings while the streets filled with the infected? At 3 p.m., I was checking the perimeter cameras when I noticed something in the spillway below the dam. At first, I thought it was debris, branches or trash caught in the current. Then I realized what I was seeing. Bodies. Dozens of them, washing down from upstream, tumbling lifelessly in the churning water. Some wore civilian clothes, others uniforms. All showed signs of violence, missing limbs, massive wounds. The city's dead were coming to us now, carried by the current. I didn't tell Ezra. He was still working, still believing we were helping somehow. Let him have that for a little longer. As dusk approached, I stood on the observation deck and watched Auburn burn in the distance. Fires had spread unchecked throughout the day. Occasionally I heard distant explosions, gas mains maybe, or desperate last stands. The facility felt enormous with just the two of us. Our footsteps echoed in empty corridors as we made our rounds. The constant hum of the turbines, once comforting, now felt like a requiem for a world that was rapidly disappearing. "I'm going to check the lower intake," I told Ezra around 6 p.m. "Make sure nothing's blocking the screens." The intake area was where water entered the turbine system, protected by massive mesh screens that prevented debris from damaging the equipment. I'd seen enough bodies in the spillway to worry about blockage. The access corridor to the intake was long and dimly lit, a narrow concrete tunnel ending at a heavy maintenance door. As I approached, I heard something that stopped me cold, a wet scraping sound from the other side of the door. Something was moving in the intake chamber. I hesitated, then carefully opened the door a crack. The smell hit me first, rotten river water and something worse. In the dim emergency lighting, I could make out a figure hunched over by the water. One of the bodies had washed in through the intake, but it wasn't a body anymore. It was moving. The figure heard the door and turned toward me. It had been a woman once. Now her skin was bloated and gray from hours in the water, one arm bent at an impossible angle. But her eyes, those terrible, milky eyes, fixed on me with hungry recognition. She lurched to her feet, water cascading from her soaked clothing, and staggered toward me with outstretched arms. I slammed the door shut and locked it, heart pounding. Through the small window, I watched her throw herself against the metal, fingernails scraping frantically, mouth opening and closing in silent hunger. They can get in through the intake, I realized aloud. If one had made it through, others could follow. Our secure facility suddenly felt much less secure. I ran back to find Ezra to warn him, but the control room was empty. His coffee cup sat on the console, still warm. "Ezra," I called out, checking the adjacent rooms. Nothing. That's when I heard the scream. The scream came from the maintenance level. I grabbed a wrench from the toolbox and ran toward the stairwell. The maintenance level was a maze of corridors cast in emergency lighting's red glow. The scream had stopped, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound. "Ezra," I called out, "where are you?" A crash came from the generator room. I approached slowly, wrench raised. Through the open door, I saw Ezra on the floor, throat torn open, blood pooling beneath him. Luther stood over him, face covered in blood, eyes vacant and hungry. "Luther," my voice cracked, "what happened to you?" He turned toward me, any recognition overwhelmed by hunger. His mouth opened, teeth stained crimson, and he lunged. I swung the wrench, connecting with his temple. He staggered but didn't fall. I swung again, catching him under the jaw. He crumpled, momentarily stunned. "Finn," Ezra gasped. "He just appeared, said he saw his family." I knelt beside him, pressing my hand to his throat wound. It was futile. "Run," Ezra managed. "More coming." Luther stirred, beginning to rise despite the devastating blows. I backed toward the door as Ezra's breathing stopped. I slammed it shut, jammed the wrench through the handle, and ran for the control room. The security cameras showed the gate at the access road open, the emergency truck abandoned nearby. Cassia roamed the turbine hall with that same predatory gait as Luther, 3 more infected following her. I barricaded myself in the control room with food and makeshift weapons. Night fell as I watched Auburn burn in the distance. Around midnight, vehicle headlights appeared on the access road. 3 military Humvees and 2 civilian trucks approached, soldiers methodically clearing infected from their path. I used the speaker system. "I'm in the control room. The facility is compromised. When they reached me, their leader introduced himself. Lieutenant Jace Rourke, Washington National Guard. You're the only survivor? Yes, there were 6 of us this morning. Auburn's gone, he said grimly. Tacoma, too. The infection spread faster than containment efforts could handle. What about Seattle, Olympia? Partial containment in Seattle. Olympia's government has relocated to emergency bunkers. 3 civilians in plain clothes joined us. Dr. Mercer, Department of Energy. The oldest introduced himself. These are my colleagues, Treadwell and Foster. Mercer spread a map across the console. The infection has claimed most of Auburn and surrounding areas. It's spreading faster than we can contain it. What are you proposing? I asked, though I already suspected. We need to stop them completely, Mercer said. The dam. It's the only way. I stared at him. You want to breach the dam? Flood the entire valley? Not just flood it, Treadwell interjected. Well, we need to destroy it, completely. You're talking about wiping out everything downstream, I said. That's dozens of square miles. Area's already lost, Rourke countered. We're broadcasting evacuation orders. Anyone still alive has 2 hours to reach higher ground. 2 hours? That's not enough time. It's all we have, Mercer cut in. The infection is spreading exponentially. By morning, it will reach the evacuation zones in the highlands. Our models predict complete regional infection within 24 hours. You're talking about destroying infrastructure that took years to build, that powers 3 counties, I protested. We're talking about saving what's left of humanity in this region, Rourke said quietly. Sometimes the hardest choice is the only choice. I looked at the monitors showing infected wandering through my facility. The city I'd powered for years was burning, its people either dead or transformed into monsters. What do you need from me? I finally asked. Structural weak points, Mercer replied. Where to place charges for maximum effect with minimum explosives. I pulled up the facility's blueprint on the main screen. These are the primary support columns. The main spillway controls are here. If you target these points simultaneously, the pressure of the reservoir will do the rest. How long to set the charges? Rourke asked Treadwell. 90 minutes if we split into teams, he replied. Make it 60, Rourke ordered. We're on borrowed time. Soldiers moved through the facility, placing explosive charges at my designated locations. I stayed in the control room, manually overriding safety protocols to increase water pressure behind critical junctures. We need to broadcast a final warning, I said. Rourke nodded. I activated the emergency system. This is Finn Callister at Raven Ridge Hydroelectric. In 60 minutes, the dam will be breached. If you are anywhere in the Auburn Valley or lower elevations, evacuate immediately to higher ground. This is not a drill. On the monitors, we could see some movement. Vehicles racing uphill, small groups climbing toward safety. But we also saw thousands of infected, oblivious to their coming destruction. Charges set, Treadwell reported at the 55-minute mark. Remote detonators synchronized. Suddenly alarms blared. Security monitors showed infected pouring into the facility from multiple points. They've breached the east entrance, a soldier shouted through the radio. Dozens of them. Fall back to the control room, Rourke ordered. Prepare for emergency extraction. Gunfire erupted throughout the facility as soldiers fought their way back. Not everyone made it. Through the cameras, I watched men being overwhelmed, torn apart by the infected. We need to go now, Mercer urged. If they reach the charges, what about the timer? I asked. We'll have to trigger it manually, Treadwell said grimly. From a safe distance. We evacuated through the north maintenance exit, fighting infected at every turn. The rooftop helipad was our rally point, a Black Hawk waiting with rotors spinning. As we lifted off, I looked down at the facility that had been my home for 11 years. Infected swarmed through every entrance, flooding the corridors like a virus through a bloodstream. Distance? Rourke asked the pilot. Safe range in 30 seconds. Treadwell held the detonator, thumb hovering over the trigger. On your command. We reached the safe distance, hovering above a ridge that gave us clear view of the dam and valley below. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting the first golden light on what remained of civilization. Think about what we're doing, I said. There could still be survivors down there. And how many more will die if we wait? Mercer countered. Rourke looked at me. Your call, Callister. You know this place better than anyone. I thought about Ezra, about Luther and Cassia, about my sister Thalia and friend Dante. Were they already gone? Or were they out there somewhere desperately trying to survive? In the end, it wasn't really a choice, just the least terrible option in a world of horrors. I nodded. Now, Rourke ordered. Treadwell pressed the trigger. The charges detonated in sequence, targeting the dam's critical points. For 3 seconds, the massive structure held against physics and water pressure. Then a web of cracks raced across the concrete face, and with a deep groan, the central section collapsed inward. Water burst through the gap, carrying chunks of the structure. The remaining sections toppled like dominoes, unable to withstand the sudden shift in pressure. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard, a roar so deep it vibrated in my chest. My God, someone whispered. From our helicopter, the devastation unfolded with terrible clarity. A 30-foot wall of water moved at highway speed, carrying debris and uprooted trees. Everything in its path vanished in seconds. Auburn disappeared beneath the deluge in minutes. Buildings crumpled, vehicles tumbled like toys. The infected were swept away without distinction, their mindless hunger no match for the flood's raw power. The valley filled rapidly, water rebounding off hillsides and creating chaotic currents. Only the tallest buildings remained partially visible, islands in a new sea. Fires bloomed where gas lines ruptured, creating surreal rivers of flame across the water's surface. There, Rourke pointed to a distant hillside. Survivors. Through binoculars, I could make out people gathered on high ground, waving at our helicopter. The pilot noted their positions for rescue teams. Did we do the right thing? I asked Rourke. We did the necessary thing, he replied, eyes fixed on the destruction below. The water had transformed the entire valley into an inland sea, with isolated buildings and hilltops forming a strange archipelago. Most striking was the absence of the infected. The flood had accomplished in minutes what might have taken months of military operations. As we approached Paradise Lodge, I saw it had been transformed into a military installation overnight. Barricades, command tents, and landing zones covered what had once been parking lots and meadows. The military camp bustled with activity, soldiers and civilians building defenses, treating wounded, distributing supplies. Operations centers had been established in the lodge with communication arrays on the roof, maintaining contact with other survivor outposts. On screens throughout the command center, satellite imagery showed the flood's progression. The entire valley had become a lake, stretching for miles in every direction. Helicopters departed on rescue missions to retrieve stranded survivors. Medical teams triaged the injured, separating the bitten from those with conventional wounds. Armed guards watched the perimeter, alert for any infected that might have escaped the flood. A large display showed the strategic situation. The flood had effectively cut the region in half, creating a natural barrier. Military units were securing the few remaining bridges and crossing points. The water's becoming our ally, Rourke explained. It's channeling the infected into predictable paths. What about the people who didn't make it to high ground? I asked. His silence was answer enough. I helped where I could, using my technical knowledge to assist with power systems. The work kept my hands busy, while my mind grappled with what we'd done. Each time I looked at the distant water, I thought of thousands who hadn't survived, both infected and those who hadn't escaped in time. That evening, Rourke found me staring out at the transformed landscape, now orange in the setting sun. The water's creating a natural barrier, he said. Infection can't spread across it easily. How many died in the flood? I asked directly. How many would have died if we'd done nothing? The infection was spreading exponentially. By our models, the entire region would have been lost within days. Through binoculars, I watched a helicopter hovering above a church steeple protruding from the flood, rescuing people from the bell tower. Your technical knowledge saved lives today, Rourke continued. We need people like you, people who understand infrastructure. Used as weapons. You mean? As tools, he corrected. Tools for survival. He pointed to a map. These dams here create similar strategic opportunities. These power stations could be modified for defense. Water treatment facilities will be critical for long-term survival. I understood what he was asking. My expertise would be needed again. I'll go wherever I'm needed, I said. He nodded. Get some rest, we move out at dawn. That night, as I lay on my assigned cot, I could see the floodwaters glittering under moonlight, stretching to the horizon. I thought about Ezra, Luther, Cassia, Thalia, and Dante. Were they already gone, or had some found safety? I would probably never know. The weight of the day's decision pressed down on me. We had destroyed a marvel of engineering, wiped away communities, and altered the geography permanently. Yet it had given humanity a fighting chance. Through the window, I could see the lights of the military perimeter, small points of brightness pushing back against the darkness. It wasn't much, just a foothold really, but it was a start, and sometimes that's all you need. We'd done what we came to do. The infected were being swept away. The surviving population centers would have time to establish new containment zones. I began the shutdown sequence, carefully closing the spillway gates to prevent damage. As the water flow gradually decreased, the roar subsided, leaving only the sound of gunfire and the moans of the infected. 2 minutes to complete shutdown, I announced. Rourke nodded, then spoke into his radio. All units, prepare for immediate evacuation. Fall back to the vehicles in sequence. We leave in 5 minutes. Sir, a soldier called from the doorway. The main access road is overrun. We can't get to the Humvees. I thought quickly. There's a maintenance road on the north side. It connects to a fire break that runs up the mountain. If your vehicles can handle off-road, it's your best option. Rourke studied the facility map, then nodded. Redirect all units to the north exit. Prepare for overland evacuation. As soldiers rushed to comply, I finished the shutdown sequence. The spillway gates closed with a final mechanical groan, the water flow returning to normal operational levels. I ran a quick diagnostic. The facility was damaged but still functional. The turbines would continue generating power until something broke with no one to fix it. Time to go, Rourke urged, gripping my shoulder. Nothing more you can do here. I took one last look at the control room, the place I'd spent countless hours maintaining the systems that powered thousands of homes. Then I grabbed my pack and followed Rourke. The corridors were littered with the bodies of infected, taken down by the soldiers as they retreated. We moved quickly, following the evacuation route to the north exit. Ahead of us, soldiers were already loading into vehicles, covering each other as they fell back. We emerged onto a narrow service road just as the sun crested the eastern mountains, bathing everything in golden light. Below us, the valley was transformed. A vast lake now filled what had once been Auburn. Water flowed through streets and around buildings, washing away the infected. From our elevation, it looked almost peaceful. Did we do the right thing? I asked Rourke as we climbed into the last Humvee. He gazed out at the flooded valley. We did the necessary thing. Sometimes that's all you can hope for. As we drove away, following the rough mountain track, I looked back at Raven Ridge. The facility stood silent against the morning sky, water still flowing through its systems by the engineering principles that remained true, even as the world fell apart around them. In the Humvee, military radio chatter provided updates from other areas. Seattle's containment was holding. Evacuees were being processed at secure facilities in the mountains. The flood had bought them time to establish proper defenses, to regroup. Where to now? I asked Treadwell, who sat across from me. Mount Rainier National Park, he replied. The military's establishing a forward operating base at Paradise Lodge. High elevation, defensible approaches, good visibility. I nodded, thinking about what might come next. The infection had changed everything in less than 24 hours. Cities fallen, thousands dead or infected, civilization retreating to fortified enclaves. But people were fighting back. The flood had shown that we could still act decisively, still find ways to survive. As we wound up into the mountains, leaving the water-filled valley behind, I saw something that gave me hope. A military helicopter circling over a group of survivors on a hillside, dropping supplies. People waving, signaling, living. The flood hadn't just cleared the infected. It had created a natural barrier against their spread, at least temporarily. The military would have time to establish proper quarantine zones, to organize the survivors, perhaps even to begin researching the infection itself. Rourke caught me watching the helicopter. "We're not done yet, Callister. Your experience with the dam systems, that kind of technical knowledge is going to be vital. We've got other infrastructure that needs assessment, other facilities that might be used." "Used as weapons, you mean?" "As tools," he corrected. "Tools for survival. That's what this is now, a fight for survival." I thought about the decision we'd made, about the water washing away everything below. Had there been survivors caught in the flood? Almost certainly. But how many more would have been lost if the infection had continued to spread unchecked? The hard truth was that the world had changed. The old rules, the old morality, they belonged to a time before the infected. Now we had to make impossible choices, had to weigh lives against lives. The flood had been one such choice. There would be others. As Paradise Lodge came into view, a cluster of buildings now surrounded by military vehicles and hastily erected barricades, I saw people working together. Soldiers and civilians, military and medical personnel, all focused on a single purpose: survival. We pulled into the compound, joining the flow of activity. People unloading supplies, setting up communications equipment, treating the wounded. A semblance of organization amid the chaos. A medical team approached our vehicle, checking everyone for bites or scratches. Once cleared, we were directed to a briefing area where other technical specialists had gathered. Engineers, infrastructure experts, communications technicians, people with skills necessary for rebuilding. Dr. Mercer addressed the group. "What we did at Raven Ridge was just the beginning. We've bought ourselves time, hours, maybe days. Now we need to capitalize on it, to secure what remains, to establish sustainable safe zones, to begin pushing back." As they outlined plans for reclaiming territory, for establishing defensive perimeters, for restoring critical systems, I found myself caught between grief for what we'd lost and determination to protect what remained. The hydroelectric plant had been my responsibility for 11 years. I'd kept the power flowing, maintained the systems, ensured everything ran smoothly. Now I had a new purpose, helping to create safe havens for survivors, using my technical knowledge to secure what was left of our world. Through the windows of the lodge, I could see the valley below. Smoke still rose from parts of the city that remained above water. The infection still ruled most of the territory. But here, in this high mountain outpost, humanity was regrouping, planning, preparing to fight back. The flood had been a desperate measure, a last resort that had cost lives but saved many more. As I joined the technical team, studying maps and infrastructure diagrams, I realized that was the new reality. Difficult choices, terrible necessities, but also hope, the dim but persistent hope that we could reclaim what we'd lost. Outside, military helicopters continued to retrieve survivors from isolated locations. Radio communications brought reports of other secure zones being established. The flood had created a natural barrier that gave us breathing room, time to organize a more coordinated response. Rourke approached me as the briefing ended. "We're sending teams to secure other critical infrastructure. Power plants, water treatment facilities, communications centers. We need people who know how to keep them running. I'll go wherever I'm needed," I said. He nodded, satisfied. "Get some rest. We move out at dawn." That night, as I lay on a cot in what had once been a tourist lodge, listening to the activity of the military camp around me, I thought about the choice we'd made at the dam. The water rushing down the valley, washing away the infected, and whoever else had been caught in its path. It would haunt me, I knew, but it had been necessary. Tomorrow we would begin the work of reclaiming what we could, of carving out safe spaces in a world suddenly filled with threats. It wouldn't be easy. The infected were everywhere, drawn to noise and movement, driven by insatiable hunger. But we had something they didn't: purpose, planning, the ability to adapt. I thought of the dam standing alone now, still generating power for cities that might never recover. A monument to what we'd built and what we'd lost, but also a reminder of what we could do when necessity demanded it. Outside my window, I could see the lights of the military perimeter, small points of brightness pushing back against the darkness. It wasn't much, just a foothold really, but it was a start, and sometimes that's all you need.